This is the We Get Outdoors podcast. My name is Rob Yates, I am your host, and welcome to this episode where my co-founder Mark Hopkins interviews world-renowned ultra-distance trail runner Ryan Sands. Mark and Ryan discuss how to prepare for an adventure, how to balance all aspects of your life to get outdoors more, why the outdoors is so magical for so many people, and what one of the greatest trail runners ever does to stay at the top of his game. So if you want to know how one race changed Ryan's life, how more people have stepped on the moon than have achieved what Ryan's achieved, how to ensure that you have the right food on any trip, how to ensure you stay motivated by what you do, and what's next in the outdoors, check this incredible episode out with one of trail running's biggest legends. This episode is brought to you by the We Get Outdoors tribe, where your next adventure is just one click away. You can join this, the fastest growing outdoor group on planet Earth, and become part of a tribe of like-minded outdoor enthusiasts, sharing your adventures, their adventures, trips and insights, and helping to ensure you plan and have the most perfect adventures. Click on the link in the description below to join for free right now.
I am so chuffed to be in the presence of a legend. This is somebody who, when I finished my hockey career, I looked at the next thing to do and I came across Ryan Sands. And this gentleman has achieved absolutely everything in the sport of trail running. And I don't know to love him or hate him, but he was the one who inspired me to do my first trail run, which I think nearly a year later, my body is still recovering from. But it is awesome to have Ryan Sands on this episode, and I'm going to share in a bit a fact about something he's done, which absolutely blew my mind. But Ryan, thank you very much for joining us. It is an absolute honour to be in your company, and I cannot wait to learn from you over the next hour or so.
Awesome, yeah. Thanks so much for the kind words, and great to be on the show, and looking forward to chatting.
Cool. So you are an absolute legend in the sport of trail running, and I know you've touched a little bit into road running as a sort of for your father, but you are one of the sort of the longest stalwarts in trail running. What got you into this? What some say is just one of the most stupid sports around there.
Yeah, I guess for me, I've always been intrigued by adventure, and my dad ran a couple of Two Oceans ultra marathons when I grew up. But at school, growing up, I was pretty into rugby, and also I did a lot of surfing. Growing up in Cape Town, spent a lot of time on Llandudno Beach surfing. So I guess I've always been into the outdoors, but it was only really the last year at university that I decided a bunch of my mates were running the Knysna half marathon. So I thought it'd be cool to join them. But fortunately or unfortunately, I entered a bit late, and only decided to join them a bit late. So the half marathon entries were full. So I thought, what the heck, half marathon, full marathon, same. And I decided to run that. So I guess that was where kind of my kind of running career started. And to my surprise, and I guess my friend's surprise, I actually finished the marathon on very little training. And from there, I kind of discovered the love for running, and kind of coming back to Cape Town and joining my local running club, the Hot Bear Harriers. I very quickly kind of discovered the trails, and for me that was just kind of just an instant draw, and it was something that really intrigued me. And before I knew it, I was kind of, I guess, like finishing up at university, where I enjoyed a really good social life. I started finding myself spending more times on the trails on the weekends, and less time in clubs and bars with friends. So it was just kind of, I guess, like an instant, not an instant, but just like a natural kind of movement for me to head into the mountains. And yeah, I guess for me, it's just that kind of, as I say, I think what's intrigues me about trail running is adventure and the unknown. And there's so many kind of external elements that are out of your control, and it's something that kind of I really love about the sport. And I guess also I've been lucky enough to run on all 7 continents. So just the places it's taken me over the past 12, 13 years has been pretty insane.
I think you've touched on something that fascinates me as we talk about the outdoors and getting out, which is about being out of control a little bit. And if you think about the society we live in at the moment, there are so many things that's controlling us. Is that one of the big draws that keeps you doing it all these years later?
Yeah, I think in some ways I wouldn't call myself a control freak, but I like to feel in control. And there are times with trail running you are pretty out of control of a number of elements. So I think I quite enjoy like kind of being out of my comfort zone in that sense. And I think it also just kind of gives me an appreciation for kind of nature and the outdoors, and also I guess it puts like us as humans into perspective. I know we kind of like to think we're high and mighty and kind of we've got everything sussed out, but I think when you're out in nature and you're facing the elements, it makes you realize like how insignificant we are as humans. And I guess in a way it really keeps me grounded. And like also talking about, I guess, humans and like how we've evolved and how kind of busy our lives are, and just with technology, we're kind of connected 24/7. And I find when I'm kind of trail running and you're just kind of out there in nature, you feel that real kind of disconnect from the busyness of life, and you're kind of able to really, I guess, just be in the moment and really just kind of appreciate just kind of being able to breathe in fresh air and just kind of enjoy being out there.
It's almost like the holy grail, isn't it? Because when we do hikes, you'll know the Giants Cup Trail, which I did recently.
Yes.
Exactly
Awesome.
that feeling, isn't it, of just getting out there with no signal and just when you want to stop, just stop and observing. When you want to run, you can run. Is that the thing that do you think people are struggling to do in the world at the moment? And that's why the outdoors is such a big pull for people?
Yeah, for sure. I think even if trail running's, I think, one of the few sports where you almost feel that direct connection with nature. There are no kind of other elements or barriers. And I think it's the same with surfing as a kid. Like when you're out there like paddling onto a wave, or you kind of trying to paddle out through waves, it's just kind of, I wouldn't say you like verse nature, but you're kind of like working with nature. And it's the same with trail running. You're kind of running up a mountain. It's really kind of can be really difficult if you've got a really long climb or it's really steep. But I guess as you kind of really kind of feel that connection to nature and the external elements. And I think a lot of people crave that. As you say, like life is really busy, but I guess in some ways it's also become quite kind of like regimented and quite just like everything's planned and everything's controlled. You like already, you're kind of, I guess if you're in corporate, you've exactly what your schedule is for the next week or next month, and just like everything's so structured, where I guess being out in nature, you're just able to break that up and also I guess just be a little bit like more in like present and in the moment, I guess. And I'm just as much to blame, but I guess with our lives becoming so busy, I guess we always kind of looking forward to kind of like what's next, trying to plan instead of just sometimes just kind of taking a deep breath and just kind of enjoying just kind of being present and kind of able to take it all in.
Yeah, it's one of my questions I've got, and I've spoken to some of the top kayakers, spoken to Richard Murray, who's one of the top triathletes as well. And it's one of the questions I'm fascinated when speaking to those and you is, how do you get that balance right where you are a top athlete whose job it is to run up mountains, around mountains, but also it's one of the most beautiful things you can ever do? How do you get that balance between seeing it as a race versus when you're training as well, just being in the moment and enjoying the nature?
Yeah, I guess it's really important to find that balance, like you said. Obviously, kind of racing, kind of there is obviously that like a very competitive element, and I guess you're not really taking as much of your surroundings in as possible. But for me, I think the sport's always been about longevity and enjoying it, and I want to wake up when I'm 60 years old and still kind of enjoy heading out into the mountains, even if it's just for a hike, like about just enjoying it. And so for me, I've always tried to find that balance between racing and training, and also doing the more adventurous stuff and really just enjoying it. I think the sad thing about the sport of trail running and ultra distance running, generally the lifespan of athletes is really short. Like you often see guys are really good for like a year to 2 years, and then they just like disappear. And like physically and mentally, the sport can be quite taxing. So for me, it's been important to find that balance and just be completely honest about like kind of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Obviously it is a profession, and like I need to like see that aspect of it, but at the same time I also I chose kind of this direction and chose trail running because I really loved it. So I think just making sure I always kind of keep that balance is important. And there's been times when I've almost had to like take a little bit of a back step from racing, just to remember like sometimes things aren't going well, and I find like mentally you just seem to like dig yourself into a hole where I've almost had to say, cool, just don't plan any like races, take a step back and just really go out and run for the pure enjoyment of it. If you're having a good time, go and run for a couple of hours. If after 10 minutes you're not feeling it, then kind of call it a day. So I think it's important sometimes to just kind of really go back to those core values. And I'll often even find kind of with the sport growing, doing a lot of community runs, like a lot of people say, oh, so awesome to run with you, but I actually find it really inspiring to run with other guys just getting into the sport. And I'm almost like able to like kind of absorb their passion. I think for me, sometimes you're doing like a big training block and you're running like 100+ mile weeks, and it's just like going through the motions. And then you go and do a community run with someone who's kind of running for the first time that week, maybe one of their first runs on the trails, and they're so excited. And you see like them just like kind of beaming with excitement, and it just makes me realize like why I actually do the sport. And I think it just helps me kind of stay grounded and remember kind of why I do this.
I think you'd have loved if you'd have been a fly on the wall on this race I did last year in February, because every dam we ran with a group of us, and every dam we saw, we literally stripped off and jumped in, had a swim, and then got our shoes back on and carried on running. It was pure for the love of it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
And that's the one thing I think that sets you apart. I think your achievements have been going for well over a decade now, which is absolutely incredible. I know you had a couple of years where you suffered from glandular fever and some illnesses. How did that manifest itself, and how were you able to come back when obviously you've achieved so much in your career and you could quite easily walked away with having had so much success, but yet your success seemed to have gone through the roof after you came back from that?
Yeah, I guess like I've always like, it's nice to do well and win races and kind of achieve, but I guess the times I've learned the most about myself and the whole process have been through those difficult periods. And I guess I've always been kind of fairly kind of like stubborn and focused. I think for me, kind of winning Western States was such a big goal of mine that kind of I wasn't going to stop until I achieved it. So yeah, I guess as you mentioned, like kind of I think it was 2015, like having the glandular fever, there was like a lot of low moments, and then even 2016 kind of coming back, but I didn't quite feel I'd kind of come back to my full potential, and then kind of finally kind of managing to win Western States in 2017 was definitely like a kind of a bit of a roller coaster ride. But I think it's also, again, to get out of that whole period when I was kind of had the glandular fever, there were definitely some moments when I thought like maybe this is it, like just kind of throw in the towel, like I've achieved a lot. And I guess what I mentioned previously, for me it was important to actually just kind of forget about racing and just kind of go back to why I started running and just enjoy running for the sake of kind of running and why I started. And that definitely kind of helped me kind of get back to kind of and to achieve the goal of winning Western States.
Cool. We're gonna touch on those epic Western States and the Great Himalaya Trail in a second. But just the sport of trail running, obviously it's exploded over the last sort of 10 years.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's exploded, and where do you see the sport going?
Yeah, it's been, I think, again, just because it's a relatively easy sport to get into, and I think people, I guess in general, are probably more health conscious, and it's also, again, with lives becoming so busy, it's a really nice sport just to kind of get out there. Anyone can do it, and it's a real like feel good sport. And also guess there's some, like, I've noticed in the areas where the communities are really strong, like the actual trail running or running communities are strong, is where the sport has really boomed. And if I look at it, when like 13, 14 years ago, when I first started, there was a handful of trail races, and now there's like a handful of trail races on most weekends. That the sport is really kind of like the ultra races have become really popular, and I guess people are kind of intrigued by kind of setting themselves kind of really challenging goals and going out and achieving them. And also, I guess, just the whole journey of kind of running a 100k trail race or a 50k trail race makes it that much more popular. And I've seen that kind of trend definitely kind of happen internationally. I know in the US there's like 100 miler every weekend. It's pretty crazy. And then again, with the way I see the sport growing, I can definitely see more people kind of doing maybe less racing and kind of more community projects and going out and doing adventures, like something I've set up in the Western Cape or in Cape Town, the 13 Peaks Challenge. Like people going out and doing their own challenge and doing it in groups and communities. And I think the cool thing with the various kind of trail running communities getting so strong, people are kind of feeling empowered to go out and do their like own micro adventures. And definitely, it doesn't have to all be like around a race. Having said that, I still definitely think there's a massive space for racing. And like I said, they're kind of races, the ultra races, the 100-kilometer plus races are definitely gaining a lot of popularity.
Yeah, no, they're massive. I think the challenge for the sport as well is like you said, is to ensure that you have that race element because you get that community. But I've just noticed in the last 3 years, just the prices of entering these races now are going through the roof, and it's just that balance as well.
Yeah, no, obviously, I guess with times being tough financially, yeah, definitely, obviously, I guess trail races are generally quite expensive, and I suppose on the whole, it looks like kind of maybe the organizers are making a lot of money. But I think with trail running being so remote and wild, obviously organizers need to put a lot of kind of contingency in place and emergency plans, and obviously with all of that, the costs add up.
Yeah, but definitely worthwhile for those who've never done it. It's definitely something to take up. But your achievements. I think if we had to list all your achievements, we'll be here for a long time. But just the ones that I think the Drakensberg Grand Traverse is an epic fastest time. And obviously the Western States Endurance Race, the Great Himalaya Trail, the first person to win all 4 desert races, and the 90k Fish River, the ones that I really stand out. But the Western States Endurance Race, for those of you who want to know what it's like to win something like that and behind the scenes, I'll put in the description, but there are 2 videos that Ryan has done. One's called Meet the Man That Ran 100 Miles Out West, which tracks a little bit of the journey to win that race. And the second one we'll talk about, called Facing Harsh Conditions in the Himalayas. But the Western States, I love at the end of the video, you stated, if you'd have won it in 2012 when you finished second, you wouldn't have come back, and also you might not have had all the other experiences. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I think 2012 was the first time I ran Western States, and to date, it's still been, like, performance-wise and feeling-wise, the best 100-miler I've had. I just felt it's one of the few times where you just feel like really good for the full 100 miles. Timothy Olsen, who beat me on the day, which also just had an absolutely incredible day. So I came second, kind of still like under the previous course record. But as I said, I think if I had won it that day, I would have probably never come back to run Western States. I kind of would have I think I would have kind of ticked a box, where coming second, I thought, kind of being pretty young to the sport, I'd come back the following year and win it. And I actually got injured just before the race, tore ankle ligaments, and then came back the following year, but didn't quite have the race, and then had a stomach bug. And it was kind of quite a roller coaster journey. And I guess, as I say, like, at times really tough to kind of stomach, but also I learned so much about myself and really kind of learned to appreciate the race that more, and just actually just the friends when I say we, my wife and I have made, from going to Western States so many times, the community that they've got there is like a really phenomenal thing that's always attracted me back to the race. So if things had gone like, or if I had won in 2012, like I said, like I would have missed out on such a big kind of part of my career, and making so many friends and so many good and bad experiences, which has kind of grown me as a person. And then I guess for me in 2017, winning Western States, my mom was out there that year. Kind of we just had a baby, or kind of Max, our son. He was 9 months then, and having my wife Vanessa and some really good friends out there. I think like for me, that's still from a racing point of view, kind of one of the best days of my racing career. So I guess, like I said, if 2012 had gone 100% and I'd won the race, I definitely wouldn't have had this whole experience and build up, and kind of which I think has kind of grown me so much as a person.
Yeah, I'm keen to explore that a little bit further. One of the things that always stood out to me on that video, and again, it's the interesting one when you have partners, family, that your face when you crossed the line having won it was, you could see almost there was a sense of satisfaction of you've achieved something. And then your wife had a completely different look on her face, which was probably relief, or that you've done it. It's just interesting how we all go through different emotions during these things.
Yeah, for sure. I think obviously like Vanessa kind of had been with me through all the ups and the downs, and obviously kind of, I guess when I'm going through a low patch, it obviously kind of impacts Vanessa. So I guess we share all the experiences together, and I've been lucky that Vanessa's traveled with me to a number of my big races, and being able to kind of experience those events and races with me. And kind of when I went out to the Leadville 100 miler, she was out there with me for like 6 weeks beforehand. So I think in a way, kind of ultra running can be seen as a solo sport, but in a bigger way, I definitely feel it's much more like, I feel kind of when I'm out there running, I'm kind of running for more than just myself. And there've been so many people along the way that have made sacrifices for me, and even being like proud to be a part of the Cape Town trail running community and the South African trail running community. I think I feel like kind of use all those that power and energy to help me kind of try and be the best I can be.
And I'm assuming that's because obviously the race is where you've got to put it all together, but we all know that behind the scenes is where you win the race. It's all the preparation. So if you reflect back on Western States, just describe to us what kind of preparation you went through in order to sort of peak for that.
Yeah, I guess for Western States, it's a relatively fast and flattish 100 miler compared to some of the European 100 milers. So the trails are relatively well groomed. So it's getting like a lot of good leg turnover, a lot of faster running. But at the same time, the kind of crucial part of the race is probably from about 80 to 140 kilometers, where it gets really hot through the canyon. So for that, it's important to a lot of heat training. So training back in South Africa, training midday or with jackets or layers on. Also doing a lot of kind of sauna training, just to really get your body used to those conditions. But then I guess also just through experiencing, learning to like use stuff like ice and running with ice hats, or kind of arm coolers and ice buffs. I guess kind of through experiencing, learning all the tricks and kind of all the tricks. But yeah, I guess probably I guess also just being at the race a number of times, or running the race a number of times, just learning just exactly kind of how the course unfolds, and just really understanding the race. I think Western States is on 100 milers generally like you need to run your own race, and the race generally starts from Forest Hill, which is 100 k's in. So I guess that was some of the key preparation. And probably I think for Western States 2017, I was a lot more consistent in my build-up, whereas times I used to do probably up until like 2015, I used to do a lot more volume and mileage in my training, whereas leading up to Western States, I just kept it a lot more consistent, lower mileage, but never had any massive like kind of ramps up in training. And I think that really helped, just kind of have one like a really structured kind of base of training, and not where you kind of ramp your training up a lot and then you have to really kind of take some time off to recover. It's just trying to be as consistent as possible. I think that really helped.
Yeah, and obviously in that race, you spent a lot of time in second place, and then your consistency probably played out, and you didn't blow out.
Yeah, as I say, like Jim had an amazing start, and I knew from previous years that if he ran the race that he wanted to run, he was gonna win. So for me, I think it was important to run my own race and really focus on that. I did kind of know he was gonna kind of fade the second half of the race, or from Forest Hill. I just didn't know to what extent and how quickly. So that was in the back of my mind, but I knew just to kind of focus on my strengths and try and get to the finish line as quick as possible.
I think it's a really good metaphor for people in the outdoors as well, around running your own race. It's about, and again, it doesn't make a difference if you're doing it at your level or we're doing it at my level, the complete opposite end of the spectrum. It's all about knowing what your capabilities are, knowing what your preparation is, knowing what you want to get out of the race or the day. If you want to stop and stare at the beautiful scenery for now, then do it.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I've kind of learned, I think, that quite early on in my career, and I've also tried to apply it to other things in life. I think it's really kind of important to, I guess, focus on like kind of what your strengths are, and just really kind of back yourself to be able to kind of go out and achieve what you want to achieve. I have said, like, more recently, I guess, like you need to focus on your own race, but also, being completely honest, I don't like run with complete blinkers on and not worry about what's happening around me. It's important to kind of get a feel for what's going on around, but then kind of focus on your strengths. I think if you're trying to run someone else's race, if I started Western States too fast, I would have also blown up and kind of not achieved my goal.
Yeah, it's interesting in the video as well. There's a bit where someone's giving you information where I think they tell you you're 20 minutes ahead, and then you're looking around and going, I'm getting different information. You can see yourself getting a little bit, what's going on?
Yeah, there was a bit of a, like, towards the end of Western States, actually, at one of the aid stations are quite close together, and I got in front of an aid station that I think I was 17 or 18 minutes ahead, and then suddenly, I think it was like 4Ks on, or no, 5Ks on or something, I suddenly got information that I was only like 2 or 3 minutes ahead. So I was like, how the hell someone kind of made 15 minutes up on me in the space of 4 or 5K. So that was like concerning. But I guess in the hindsight, it was a good thing. It made me kind of run a bit quicker to get to the finish line.
That's always a good little boost at the end.
Exactly.
I just want to, before we go into the detail of the one thing that has blown most people's mind away, which is the Great Himalaya Trail that you did. Where does some of you, and again, you touched on your 13 peaks, and I saw another one of your interviews where you just scribbled on a bit of piece of paper and you sort of plotted a route and told a mate you'd be done by 12 o'clock, and I think he missed out on moving house or something.
Yeah.
Where do these things come from? What goes on in Ryan Sand's brain?
Yeah, I guess for me, like I said, I think what intrigues me about trail running is adventure, and I guess I'm always dreaming up ideas and concepts and thinking of ways to, I guess, just do something a little bit different, but also kind of set up a cool adventure. So I guess stuff like doing the Great Himalaya Trail. I think for me, kind of the Great Himalaya Trail was something I've always aspired to do, and I felt after kind of winning Western States and kind of ticking off a major race objective, or probably my biggest race objective that I wanted to achieve, that I was ready to go out and do something kind of really crazy and then out the box. And then looking to 13 Peaks, which I've set up fairly recently, or kind of earlier this year. Yeah, I guess for me, I kind of always wanted to set up something that took in kind of my kind of most iconic trail runs in Cape Town, and just see if I could link up a number of peaks and as you mentioned, I kind of plotted a couple of peaks on a piece of paper and kind of linked them up. I'm never one for kind of doing too much map work and kind of measuring all the distances. Maybe because I plotted it on a small piece of paper, I thought that the peaks would be a bit closer together. But yeah, and I managed to talk Kane Riley, one of my mates, into joining me. And I thought it would be about 50 Ks maximum, like 55 Ks. And yeah, it ended up being over 100 Ks. So it was actually his first time running more than 50 or 60 kilometers. So he did pretty well. He missed out on helping his girlfriend move that day. But yeah, I think he's managed to get back in the good books now, at least.
You probably owe him a few favours now. You've got to move his house next time.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the Great Himalaya Trail. And I think I won't do it justice, and you can tell about the distances that you ran and the time. But one thing that just blew me away, there are more people who've stepped foot on the moon than have done the trail end to end. That's just an insane stat. So tell everybody about this incredible trail.
Yeah, so the Great Himalaya Trail is a foot trail that the section we did was from the western border of Nepal to the eastern border of Nepal. So basically the border of Tibet and Nepal, and we kind of crossed the Nepalese Himalayas all the way to the Indian border. So it was about 1,700 kilometers with about 70 or just under 80,000 meters of ascent and descent. And I did it with a friend of mine, Rainer Christel. And it took us 20, see, I forgot the days now, either 24 or 25 days. And yeah, it was definitely probably was the craziest thing I've ever done, the biggest adventure, and something for me, I always saw that as like kind of the biggest adventure that I could do. And yeah, I guess you always get this romantic idea of these kind of big mountains, and like you think it's going to be epic, which it was, but it was tough and challenging. And we did it in April, and that had a really late winter. So like the week before we got there, they experienced a really kind of had a lot of snow and ice and stuff. So a lot of the routes in the higher mountains, because you're crossing over passes of 5,500 meters plus, were snowed in and iced in. So navigation was really challenging. Reno got frostbite. We got like kind of stranded in the middle of nowhere a couple of times. So yeah, it was a proper like eye opener for me, but again, like a really epic experience. And I guess for me, probably kind of definitely one of the most crazy things I've ever done.
And not only is it insane to think about the distances and where you went, but you did it with a 20-liter bag, and that's it. No sleeping bag, no tents, no food. Really relied on the goodwill of the Nepalese people. So not only the distance, but just you were literally reliant on other people and yourselves.
Yeah, I think so. Basically, in order to move quicker, I guess you have to carry less stuff. So Rain and I were quite calculated in that, but we were super reliant on the local people. And for me, the biggest thing that came out of that project was literally that there were times when we would knock on people's door at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and they would like open their house up, make us food, let us sleep in their beds, and never have like an expectation. And I think just that like simple gesture of kindness goes so far. And looking back now, once or twice in the Dolpha region, a really remote area where we had to stay at a monastery the one night and then with a monk the following night, like if they didn't take us in, like we probably would have died out there. The weather was just that extreme and that cold. So for people to, I guess, to like take in complete strangers, as I say, like I definitely wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for their kindness. So I think that was just like absolutely kind of mind blowing for me, and the biggest kind of part of the project.
That's an absolutely incredible achievement. And when you came back, did Vanessa notice a different Ryan at all?
Yeah, I feel I was probably a skinnier Ryan when I came back. I lost a bit of weight. I think like yeah, mentally it took a while for everything to settle in and like to process stuff. And to be honest, I feel like kind of I've just come back from a project in Namibia, and I feel like out doing that project was only when I started to actually kind of process a lot of stuff. I guess kind of, as you say, you go and do like something, and you kind of out there for like 5-6 weeks, and then you come back and just life is so busy, you don't actually get a chance to fully process things. But I definitely think I've kind of grown a lot from the project, and I think it's always a good reminder to be out there in those areas. And I also remember doing a race out in Madagascar, just where kind of really kind of people live in really basic conditions, and they don't have a lot, but there's some of the like the Nepalese people and some of the Madagascan people that I saw, some of the most happiest people that I've seen in my life, and all they kind of have is a shelter, and for them their daily kind of objective is to find food and water and feed their families. Life is super basic, but they just seem really, really happy. And I guess it's sometimes then you come back to like a really busy city, and you see kind of people getting road rage, and everyone's kind of frustrated and angry, and you just kind of wonder like maybe we're missing the point a little, like the point of life. So I guess it's always a good reminder to kind of find that balance of kind of, I guess, being able to provide for your family, but also kind of be happy and make sure you don't get too busy in life, or kind of get too consumed with things that actually aren't important.
Yeah. Do you find yourself starting to like tap your fingers, and when you haven't been out into the wild, into the adventures for a bit, when you've been cooped up in the house, you start feeling yourself change a little bit?
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Like, yeah, kind of sitting indoors for a couple of days, I definitely kind of feel that urge that I want to go out and get out there. And I think also just like talking about it, adventure, also kind of for me, I think at the point where I am now in my life, I think kind of when I think of adventure, just kind of getting out there, and whether it's like a micro adventure of just kind of literally kind of telling my 3-year-old son, like, we're going to go for a hike, and just putting him in a backpack and just kind of trying to head out to like a peak in the distance, and kind of do a full loop and kind of return back to the car. Or if it's kind of planning something like 13 peaks, for me, I think that they're all just as rewarding in different ways. And it's something that that I enjoy about 13 peaks, the challenge that I set up. Guys have got the opportunity to do it in 1 day or a 2-day or a multi-day. So they're different badges or different challenges. And I think it's cool that like it enables someone to do something like that and kind of do it as fast as they can, maybe in 1 day, but then also enable someone to do it kind of with a bunch of mates, or with a wife, or kind of with like kind of your kids over multi-days, and kind of take it in and have a completely different different experience, but on the same route. So for me, yeah, I think kind of I'm really kind of like I enjoy those big adventures, and kind of where I was now up in Namibia, kind of, I guess, really kind of pushing the limits. But at the same time, I also find, like as I mentioned, going out and doing 13 peaks, or kind of a hike with Max, or kind of heading to mates in the Cedarburg, just as rewarding.
Cool. Well, let's delve a little bit into you.
Yeah.
You've got a nickname which what your nickname, Hedgie?
Yeah, so my nickname, Hedgehog, I used to have fairly long hair at school, and then I cut it short, and then it kind of went all spiky, and I guess one of my friends teased me and called me Hedgehog, and I got upset with them. And I guess as things happen, when you kind of, it kind of just stuck with me, and then Hedgehog became Hedgie, and it's something that's kind of stuck with me. I think since about standard 7 or 8.
Never to leave you, that one.
Yeah.
And obviously, one of the challenges you've mentioned, wife and son, and you've got obviously one of the best athletes around in ultra trail running. Proud dad, husband, obviously got your sponsors as well. How do you? Because again, a lot of people who obviously are not professional athletes but still have this desire to get into the outdoors, have to balance family, work, all that. How do you balance everything to still enable you to do the races and the training and the fun part of it?
Yeah, I think it's tough, and if I'm completely honest, I'm probably like to think I found the balance, but I'm still learning that the whole time, and I guess do get kind of things wrong at times, but yeah, I guess I'm lucky in a sense that kind of my family really support me and are understanding, and for me, I also always try and include them where I can when I'm going into the outdoors, or even some of my easier runs. My wife joins me for a portion of them, so I guess I think it's important to like include your family into what you're doing, whether it's like it's just a hobby and you're doing it on the weekends, to make them feel a part of it, or to include them, even if I guess if it's maybe you're not going to run as fast as you want, if your wife's joining you, or if kind of family or friends are. But I think it's so much more rewarding to share those experiences and the longevity and kind of being in a good like mental space. But yeah, I guess at times I've kind of really busy. Also doing a lot of work with the Southern Lodestar Foundation up in KZN, so that keeps me busy. So like kind of juggling everything, as you mentioned, with sponsors and stuff. But I guess yeah, I guess if you're passionate about everything, it seems to kind of fit in, and just try and be like mindful of kind of all the different situations. And yeah, I guess just kind of it all works out.
Yeah, I think it's very profound what you said there around, because you talked about passion and sort of implying the purpose of what you're doing. And a lot of people are chasing things that they're probably not passionate about. It's because they think they need to do it rather than they actually want to do it. That's a big challenge that a lot of people face.
Yeah, I've 100%. Also, I think like I've make the same mistake a lot of times. I see a lot of people. I guess it's like easy to get like super busy and you feel like you're spinning the whole time. But then if you just actually like stop, and for me that's why I love just kind of going out for a long run, or even if it's a long adventure, and being out in my own headspace for a day or 2 days or 5 days or however long. I think it really enables me to kind of stop and process everything, and you're able to kind of strip out all the stuff that's keeping you busy and that you actually probably don't need to be doing, and really focus on kind of what makes you happy, and kind of what you need to focus on. As I said, like it's also easier said than done. I know there's often times when you get so caught up in everything, you just feel like you're spinning the whole time, and there's not enough time for everything, and it's just like a bad cycle. So yeah, for me, I kind of, when that starts to happen, I know it's time to go for a very long run and just kind of really process everything.
And Vanessa's probably kicking you out of the house anyway.
Exactly.
Right, we're going to do a quick fire one, and then just going to delve a little bit deeper into Ryan Sound. So it's an either or. There's no offense. First thing that comes into your head.
Cool.
Winter or summer?
Summer.
Rain or snow?
Snow.
Mountains or desert?
Both.
There's no sitting on the fence.
Okay. No, mountains.
Steak or salad?
Steak.
Beer, wine or whiskey?
Beer.
Night at the movies or night on the couch?
Couch.
City or countryside?
Countryside.
Ford or Toyota?
Ford.
Oof, we're going to fall out. Surf or snow?
Sorry, you said
surf
or snow? Oh, surf.
Tent or bed and breakfast?
Bed and breakfast.
You can see you want.
I've spent enough time in dodgy tents.
We're probably dodgy storers as well.
Exactly.
Dried meat or sweets?
Dried meat.
Beach or jungle?
Beach.
Africa or North America?
Africa.
Yeah, there we go. A bit more insight. So apart from the Ford Toyota one, we're pretty okay. I'm about to stop now. I'm just obviously when you get to speak to someone, and this is my selfish hat coming on here, where I see now as my hockey career comes to an end, I really want to move into trail running as a sport that I just can see aligned to what I believe in and what I want to do. But So someone like me, who's got the bug, who's really starting out, what kind of tips would you give people starting out in trail running who don't want to get to a good, but want to be able to do it and enjoy the experience?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to actually just get out there and enjoy it. Not to overthink it. I think just starting off, even if guys often come from like a road running background, or maybe it's kind of hockey or team sports, and all those guys, like, you're generally relatively fit. But I think when you're out trail running, suddenly you kind of, if you're in the Drakensberg or you're on bigger mountains, you suddenly find like you feel like you have to run up these mountains. And for me, I think it's important to know that it's okay to hike or walk, just keep moving forward, and just kind of go according to kind of your fitness levels, and whether it's kind of walking 2 minutes, running a minute, and then kind of gradually kind of reducing the walking. But I also find practice makes perfect. So like on technical running, the best way to improve is just to go out there and do it. And there are things with technique, like running downhill, to look far enough ahead that you're not just looking down at your feet, because your brain programs like everything for you. And kind of, maybe if you're running up a really steep climb, to like kind of increase your cadence, so like make your steps smaller and faster, and use your arms a bit. And just small things like that, I think is important. But I think mainly just to get out there and not overthink things too much. Again, if you're coming from a road running background, I often tell people, don't, like, I guess the road running, it's a little bit more predictable, whereas you can go on a trail run and kind of 10Ks can take you anything from 40 minutes to 2 hours. So I guess, yeah, you need a plan for, or not plan, but kind of don't underestimate the trail. And also just especially if you're going to go out into bigger mountains, or a little bit like further out into the trails, take kind of some cold weather gear with you, take sufficient water and food, and make sure you let someone know where you're going, because anything can happen. You can sprain an ankle, something like that, and suddenly it's going to take you a really long time to get back to the car. And often in the wilderness areas, there isn't great signal. So I think just taking a few kind of basic things into account will really help you enjoy your experience that much more.
Cool. It's awesome advice. And one thing I just want to delve a little bit deeper, because one of my bucket lists, and a friend of mine have talked about maybe next year or the year after, is the Grand Traverse, which is crossing a big mountain range in South Africa called the Drakensberg. And one thing that we're debating at the moment is food. And obviously in multi-day races or traverses, what's your philosophy on food for those kind of events?
Yeah, I think something like that, you obviously need to take enough food to get through the period of like however long you're going to be out there for. But at the same time, if you carry too much, it's gonna weigh you down. So I think for me, it's about having kind of like easy things to eat, like on the go, to keep you filled. But then also to have, when you kind of have a proper stop in the evenings, or if it's for breakfast or something, have a proper meal, something that's high in calories. And I generally, on those those kind of trips, try and have something that's kind of really high in proteins and fats, so that you can kind of really replenish your body. And then also important things like just taking lots of electrolytes, because when you're out in the Drakensberg, you get slightly higher altitude, you get a bit more dehydrated. So lots of electrolytes. I guess the best way to explain electrolytes is a bit like if you're running a vehicle, kind of the petrol is the fuel you put in the car, but electrolytes is like the oil. If you don't have enough oil, you're going to seize the engine. So making sure you take in enough electrolytes is really important too. And then also with food, I think and nutrition in general, it's important to find what works for you. And it's something, it's very personalized. So like what works for me won't necessarily work for you. And I also find with me, kind of something will work for me for a couple of years, and then it just doesn't work. And then you have to kind of keep evolving. So I guess beforehand, it does help to try and figure out kind of what your preferences are. Just to kind of, I guess, make the trip a little bit more pleasant.
Yeah, I remember cramping. Oh, it's not a nice experience thing. got
Yeah, no, it's not pleasant.
So one thing we give our guests the opportunity is their power minute, where
Okay.
instead of being bombarded with questions that you have to answer, you get to talk about anything that you want to talk about. So I'm going to hand the microphone over to you, and
Cool.
you can share what you want to share.
Put me on the spot. Is there
On the
anything
spot.
specific or is it open to whatever?
Whatever comes into your mind that you want to talk about and share.
Cool. I'm trying to. She's kind of not. Now I'm suddenly at a loss of words. Cool. I guess I'll keep it on trail running, and maybe I guess just like talking about the whole like adventure element is something I'm into. So I guess maybe planning for a micro adventure or something like 13 Peaks. A lot of people ask me like, where do you start? How do you start? And I think it's important to, obviously, as you discussed, I think first of all, kind of plot a rough route or have an idea of what you want to achieve, and maybe, unlike what I do, maybe try and look at it on Google Earth or on a map and figure out exactly what the distances are going to be. I think that is a good help. And then just to put a bit of a safety plan in place if it's going to be really wild and remote. Take sufficient medical supplies and a medical kit. You don't have to go over the top, but just if you're going to be out in the Drakensberg and the weather closes in on you, like I've spoken to Rainer, my friend, who I've done a lot of stuff with. He's been stuck out there, kind of huddled in a cave for 2 days. So take a little bit of extra food, let people know where you are. You can also take devices like a spot tracking device, which actually tracks your spots, so you can give that link to kind of family or friends, so they can see that you're still okay, or if they don't hear from you for a couple of days, they can see where exactly you are. So I think that point of view. Also, I guess, kind of also just like obvious micro planning. So the goal would be to kind of complete the route or the adventure, but then also taking a step back and just like setting lots of little mini goals along the way and breaking it down. So knowing that at the end of day one, or at the end, or at lunchtime, or kind of 12 o'clock, you want to be at a certain place, and just kind of planning things and knowing maybe where you're going to sleep, or kind of also planning for kind of the unexpected. So if weather rolls in or it suddenly gets a lot colder, a lot hotter, just kind of seeing maybe where there's water on the route, where there's shelter, etc. So I guess that's quite key for planning for a micro adventure. And then I think also just keeping it exciting and fun, and just kind of exploring, and also I guess just kind of going out there and trying something. And if it fails, then who cares? I think the most important thing is that you gave it a bash. And I guess a lot of the time, something I enjoy is kind of planning is probably often like half of it, and it's quite exciting to kind of plan and get everything ready, and then just to kind of head out for this kind of cool experience. Cool. I think that was maybe over a minute.
No, I could let you go on for ages. It's fascinating what you said as well. I love that. And it's what for me differentiates the outdoors a little bit, is if it doesn't always go to plan, who cares? You know, there's not always the right answer. It's not like a maths 2 + 2. It's
exactly. I think it's all down to experience. And if I look, and I think for me, like writing a book and kind of looking back on some of my experience, it actually made me realize like it's not actually the big race wins that kind of stand out now. If I think back to the Drakensberg Traverse, like the first thing that comes to mind was the very first recce I did when I was completely underprepared, had like the wrong equipment and stuff. And we were out there in October. The weather should have been really good, but suddenly we got up there and woke up after the first night, and it was snowing and icy, and there was like torrential rain, and I was just completely out of my comfort zone. But when I think back to Drakensberg Traverse, that's always something that comes to mind. It's not like kind of that we set a fastest no in time. So I guess, yeah, I guess with any adventure experience, generally, I guess when things go wrong is probably the times you remember it the most. And I guess in hindsight, probably that like looking back now, it's kind of when things go wrong that kind of telling the stories now, they're probably the most interesting stories and things you can actually laugh about.
It's like waking up after having too much to drink. I'm never going to drink again. And then next time.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time. I've got millions of more questions, but just to wrap up, What do you see as the next big thing in the outdoors trail running, but really sort of in the outdoors world that we live in?
Cool. So so I think like the next big thing in the outdoors is definitely, or maybe the headspace I'm in is kind of going on micro adventures or adventures, and I think a lot of people kind of just want to be out in nature, whether it's kind of fast packing or kind of riding a bike and it's self-powered, and then you're riding a bike and you're linking up peaks, or it's kind of riding a bike and paddling. I've even noticed like adventure racing starting to take off again. So I think people are just wanting to get out in the wilderness, and I guess just kind of be free and do their own thing, and not be like super regulated, because I guess our everyday lives are pretty kind of pretty structured. So I think kind of adventure definitely kind of lets you kind of just be able to let your hair down and have that kind of freedom. I even think with apps like Strava, etc., guys also feel like you can kind of go and like run a route, and someone else's, like your mate's got a faster time, so you can go and push yourself, but you don't have to do it in that race environment. You can go and do it on a Saturday morning on your own, and it's cool. I think with technology, it's kind of enabling us to do more stuff on our own, and not have to do it like at a race or kind of at a specific time.
Cool. So to last one, obviously I think your longevity in the sport is incredible, but at some point your body is going to catch up, and things are going to start changing. And obviously you talked about the 13 Peaks Challenge that you've set up, but talking about the legacy that you want to leave behind, and your life post racing, what do you see that being?
Yeah, I guess as you said, I've been lucky. I've had a really long career, and I think for me, it's about keeping the passion. So maybe I'm still enjoying kind of racing, maybe doing less racing, and it's more like probably like a handful or slightly less races that really motivate me and appeal to me. But I think kind of the adventure side of me still wants to keep running for as long as possible, and there's a number of kind of projects and adventures I want to do. So being kind of aligned with Red Bulls is really awesome. That kind of you can think up these stupid ideas, and they say like, cool, how can we make it happen? So that's been really awesome for me. And I think there's still like a lot more in me. But having said that, I definitely feel like I want to give back to the sport. So doing something like 13 Peaks, I feel it's like quite a community driven project, and I feel like I'm like able to kind of create those kind of micro adventure, or the adventure for the community. And I think in general, like I said, I'd like to be involved in the sport as long as possible. But as I say, like make sure it stays a passion of mine. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm doing a lot of work with the Southern Lodestar Foundation, so up in KZN. We have a number of feeding projects, and we're doing nutritional education. So I guess just like you being able to use kind of what running's given me, or trail running's given me, and use the platform it's given me to be able to still do good and give back. And I think that's most important. I've realized that it's awesome to win Western States, and something I worked really hard towards achieving. But I think it's more important now. Obviously, I still want to kind of do well and achieve in racing and running, but also just kind of use running as a vehicle to be able to do better for our planet and our continent and country, and just try and make the world a better place.
Well, that's a fantastic way to end this conversation. Just a couple of things from, if you, as I said, those things on YouTube, the looking at your behind the scenes, the Western States and the Great Himalaya Trail, I encourage every single person to go out and watch them and subscribe to them, because they are absolutely mind-blowing. And Ryan, if people want to follow you? How do they find you?
Yeah, so probably the best channels to follow me on are Facebook and Instagram, also Twitter. So my handles on all of those are Ryan Sands, like at Ryan Sands, or Facebook is Ryan Sands, and it's Sands Sandes. So it's like Sanders, or it's a silent E. So those are the best platforms to follow me on.
Perfect, and we'll put all that in the description for everybody to watch those incredible videos and follow you. But Ryan, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you very much for inspiring so many people to get out there, enjoy the outdoors, appreciate nature. And I think, as you talked earlier, it's a space that, because of people like you, getting people like me to go outdoors, we get to calm down, we get to really make a sort of an impact in our community, in our lives. So just thank you for everything you're doing in trail running, but also in society.
Awesome. No, thank you. Thanks for the kind words, and it's been great chatting.
This episode is brought to you by the We Get Outdoors tribe, where your next adventure is just one click away. You can join this, the fastest growing outdoor group on planet Earth, and become part of a tribe of like-minded outdoor enthusiasts, sharing your adventures, their adventures, trips and insights, and helping to ensure you plan and have the most perfect adventures. Click on the link in the description below to join for free right now.